Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be tearing into an absolutely monster bench vise. This thing is very old and very heavy. But before we get into the video, let's thank today's sponsor. And today's sponsor is Squarespace. Squarespace is an online website building platform that we absolutely know and love. You guys can get started today with a free trial at Squarespace when you go to squarespace.com/forge, and you can get 10% off your first purchase when you use code FORGE at checkout. With that, let's check out this vise. So here's what we've got for you today. This right here is a Prentiss No.22 bench vise. It was cast about 100 years ago in New York City, New York. Just for a little bit of scale, this is the bench vise that we usually have mounted on the welding table here. It's got about 4-inch wide jaws and it weighs about 25 pounds. This vise, on the other hand, has 6-inch wide jaws. It weighs 168 pounds. It has a rear swivel jaw and a swivel base. Okay, so we'll start by taking the dynamic jaw out of the body, taking the whole slide out. It's pretty easy right here, and it starts to get kind of stiff. And there's two reasons that it might do that. The first reason is that the actual Acme thread on the inside is bent. And the other reason is that someone used the slide back here as an anvil and mushroomed out the outside of it, which makes it rub on the inside and makes it a little bit harder to get out of the body. One of the other issues that you saw before I started opening this up is that the jaws don't actually close all the way because the tops here have been beaten in to the point where you can't hold anything thinner than a 1/16 of an inch. All right, there we go, we're free. See here, the swivel base is completely loose. There's a nut down there that I'll be able to tighten. And then there's that vise nut on the inside. You can see the slide fills up the inside of this cavity, but it's completely free now. We'll pop it out and have a look at that thread and the inside of the slide. Oh gosh. This thing is heavy. Okay, here's our slide. Yeah, okay, so we're getting some wear marks from about here on out, which is awesome. That's an easy fix. That can just be lightly filed down to loosen it up. Ooh, the thread looks really nice. That's good. It looks clean. So now that we got that taken apart, we can go ahead and take the rest of the pieces apart in here. We've got this big square nut on the bottom, which is super loose. That shouldn't be that loose. Ooh, there we go. Now I've got to pull out this little pin in here so I can take out the whole vise nut. I can see the bottom of it poking through there. It doesn't seem to want to yank out, so we're gonna hammer it out. Okay, it appears to be mushroomed in there. We might need to take this vise into the grinding room and just grind off the very end of that. Now we can pop out that vise nut before we get this thing soaking to break everything loose. There we go. The plan now is to grind off the two little ears of this collar that hold it on. We're gonna have to make a new one anyway. I'm pretty excited. The internals of this vise look actually really nice, which is a really good thing. That means my job's gonna be a little bit easier. What I'm gonna do now is degrease all of these parts. So I'm gonna go ahead, throw most of these parts. I'm gonna leave out the spindle and the dynamic jaw, but the rest of those parts are all gonna go into the simple green to completely strip off all of the paint, the 100 years of grease, and all that nasty junk that's in there right now, which means it will have a nice clean surface to work on when we're finished with the machining. So while we let all that grease and paint and stuff dissolve in that simple green, I'm gonna just use some brake cleaner to get all the grease off of these two guys before I move on to making the collar that'll allow this jaw to move back and forth. Okay, so up next what I'm gonna do is start to make the collar for this thing. So we're gonna bore an 1¼ inch size hole in a piece of steel in there. We'll then drill and tap a hole for a set screw so that we can tighten it down onto the spindle, and it'll make it so that the vise works properly. here's the situation. I've got the collar made up, I've got it threaded, but it can't turn because the head hits the sidewall of that inside pocket there. So what we're gonna do is chop off the head of that and then carve a groove in the end and make it into a flathead drive screw. Okay, now that I got that collar finished up, I'm gonna throw this into the simple green with the rest of the things as well. Hopefully I can get it in there without ruining everything. We'll see. Okay, it's been 24 hours of this soaking in the simple green. I definitely tore a hole in the bag, and it definitely diluted itself all of the way. But we're gonna take it apart anyway, we're gonna take it out. I might need to do a little bit of wire wheeling on it, but I'm far too impatient to wait for the full weekend. So we're gonna take them out now. So I'm gonna wash my hands off and we're gonna go ahead and scrub all of these babies down, see if we can get down to some bare metal. Okay, so now that I got all those parts cleaned off with the wire brush, it's time to unstick that swivel jaw. I'm gonna throw it in this big old post vise and start whacking on that jaw until it comes loose. Might need to apply a little bit of heat. I'm definitely gonna use some PB Blaster, which is a penetrating oil, to get in there to hopefully loosen things up. We're just gonna whack on it until it's free. Okay, so first off, we got the swivel jaw fit up nicely. Moves back and forth freely, that's great. We're gonna head into the grinding room and clean up some of this. Someone also decided to try cleaning up the outside of this, probably to get some paint off at some point with an angle grinder. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, but we're gonna get some of those marks out and make this thing look pristine. Got a little bit of JB Weld here. I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up and fill some of the voids in the jaw here. It doesn't change anything structurally, but aesthetically it's gonna look a lot nicer. The wall that JB Weld is setting, we're gonna go ahead and clean up all of these little pieces. This is the plunger that locks the swivel base in various positions. This is the swivel jaw pin. This is the nut that connects the main body of the vise to the swivel base. And this is the handle that controls the swiveling locking position. We're gonna go into the grinding room and clean them all up. Okay, JB weld is set. We're gonna go ahead and grind it off and smooth out these jaws. This isn't working. I'm gonna have to pop those jaws off and mill them flat in a regular milling operation, which is not what I was hoping to do, but it should work either way. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and buy a set of hardened tool steel jaws. They're knurled and they're already the right size, and it comes with new screws. So this is probably gonna be the easiest thing for me to do. I'll have to fit them up to the jaws when they get here, but I think this is the right solution right now. And while we wait for those to get here, I've got to work on the handle with the spindle, as well as getting those old jaws off. These are mushroomed around the outside, so they're not coming out, which means we need to go into the grinding room and use a carbide burr to get all that material off of there, and we have to put back the other vise so that we can hold this in the grinding room. So one of the big issues on this is that we need to be able to refinish the meatball of the vise, and I'm gonna go ahead and remachine a new handle while we're at it to fit into the wallowed out hole that's inside the meatball. So I'll just turn a slightly larger diameter handle, turn 2 ball ends for it, and then hot peen them over, smooth it all out, make it look seamless. Okay, so it's been a couple days now and the new Vice jaws have showed up. Let's go ahead and see how they fit. They slide on really easy, but they do not line up square. So that means that we're gonna need to throw this thing in the mill and mill back those shelves just a little bit so that these jaws sit flat. Well guys, I am absolutely thrilled with how this thing came out. The swivel base moves completely freely and it was totally jammed up when I first got it. The spindle and the dynamic jaw are super smooth, and again, they were absolutely crusty when I picked it up. The swivel jaw is another piece that was completely frozen when I got it, and now it moves totally freely. I also replaced these VISE jaws on here. I got these from Kevin Scott, and they're A2 tool steel hardened to 54 Rockwell, which means that they're gonna hold up for a very long time. This vise is going to be up for grabs on my Squarespace website, which makes it very convenient because today's sponsor is in fact Squarespace. It was very easy for me to build a beautiful product page on Squarespace, despite the fact that I'm completely technologically illiterate. I have no coding experience whatsoever, but despite that fact, I was able to build myself a beautiful website and a beautiful product page for this vise. There's no plugins or patches. You can run email marketing campaigns. You can even purchase your domain name directly through Squarespace, which makes it so easy to get started with a nice website, which is an absolute essential in today's online business world. You guys can get started today with a free trial when you go to squarespace.com/forge, and you can get 10% off your first purchase when you use code FORGE at checkout. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.